has to offer. Sentry. And just complete this history of Sentry. Or not complete, because that could take a while. It's more just a biography of sorts. Like an autobiography, but not an autobiography. It's not by him. I'm rambling. I'm so sorry. We're going to dive right in now. So in the year 2000, Bob Reynolds, a seemingly normal man, suddenly recalls that he is the superhero known as the Sentry, the incredible hero with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. Along with this recollection, he realized that his arch nemesis, the Void, was coming back to Earth. So Bob began to seek out the world's most prominent heroes to warn them of the coming threat. As he talked to various heroes, the memories of the Sentry began to return. Peter Parker had taken a photo of the Sentry that had won him a Pulitzer Prize. Sentry flew with Angel countless times to help him get rid of the fear of falling. And the Hulk never forgot the Sentry, as Robert had helped the Hulk control his rage by producing a calming aura. Most importantly, Mr. Fantastic remembered that the Sentry had been his best friend and had often teamed up with the Fantastic Four to fight the world's greatest threats. Over time, the world began to remember that the Sentry and accepted all the good he had done in the world. While the heroes of Earth were waiting for the Void to come, Reynolds and Richards made a shocking discovery. The Void and the Sentry are two parts of the same torn psyche. The reason the world had forgotten about Sentry was because he used his power to erase the memory of the Sentry from the mind of everyone on Earth, including his own, thus destroying the Void once and for all. As the Void came closer and closer to Earth, Reynolds realized he must make the same sacrifice again. So, with the help of Doctor Strange and Mr. Fantastic, he once again erased the memory of Sentry from the world. Sentry would appear again in New Avengers issue 1 as a prisoner of the Raft, a super prison built specifically to house supervillains. He had voluntarily imprisoned himself for the murder of his wife, Lindy Reynolds. During a jailbreak on the Raft, Sentry defends several Avengers from the murderous psychopath Carnage. He easily overpowers Carnage, flies him into the depths of space, and tears him in two. Taking an interest in the now free Sentry, the Avengers begin to investigate his dark persona. The team soon learned that the Void is actually the result of a cerebral virus created by Mastermind, which also damaged the Sentry's ability to remember any part of his life. Emma Frost cures Sentry of this virus, and memories start flooding back. He realized that he had never actually killed his wife, and that he had subconsciously hidden his watchtower, which stood atop of Stark Towers. With his memory now intact, he joined the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. The population began to fall in love with Sentry, calling him the Golden Guardian. All the while, though, Reynolds' psychological problems only worsened. The Sentry and the Void were in a constant wrestle for control over Reynolds' body. The Void claimed that Reynolds transformed into the Void instead of the Sentry, that the Sentry was merely a byproduct born of the guilt of that transformation. With only half of Robert Reynolds' memories, the Void possessed the other half. Sentry could never really confirm if the Void was lying or not. With the help of Doctor Strange, Sentry was able to realize that he was in fact real, and he also regained the memory of how he gained his powers. He had ingested a super soldier serum, which was developed in order to get high as a teenager. Realizing that he no longer needed the Void to balance out his acts of good, the Sentry flew into space and hurled the Void into the sun. But the Void vowed to return. During the Civil War, Sentry sided with Stark's Pro-Registration Act, and afterwards joined Tony's Mighty Avengers, the newest incarnation of the Avengers. He is considered the most powerful member of the team, and is one of the most important members leading up to the Skrull's secret invasion. After the invasion, Sentry is approached by Norman Osborn, and they began to discuss Reynolds' mental issues. Osborn tells Sentry that the Void is just his imagination, and that he could help him deal with these issues if Sentry would join his version of the Avengers, the Dark Avengers. For their first battle, the Dark Avengers were charged with helping Doctor Doom and the rest of Latveria from an attack by Morgan Le Fay. During their battle, Osborn urges Sentry to unleash his full power, and Bob easily rips off Morgan's head. Sentry wonders if he did the right thing, with Norman assuring him that he did. As the Dark Avengers go on more and more missions, Osborn leads Sentry down a darker and darker path, all while assuring him that's fine. Eventually, it was revealed that Norman was able to awaken the void inside the Sentry, which slowly attempted to take control of his body. The void was able to convince Reynolds to give up his Sentry form, allowing the void to take complete control. Osborn, deciding to submit his base over America, chose to attack Asgard under the guidance of Loki. Acting as Osborn's secret weapon, Sentry, now possessed by the void, is the first to attack the city and does battle with numerous different Asgardians, including Thor. Ares, the god of war and member of the Dark Avengers, realizes Osborn's ulterior evil motives and turns on him. Norman responds by sending the Sentry after the god of war, and Sentry literally tears Ares in half. After the death of Ares, Captain America and the Avengers arrive and are able to take down Norman Osborn. Only after being beaten, though, does Osborn reveal that he was the only one keeping Sentry in check. Now the Sentry has completely merged with the Void. The Avengers try to mount a counteroffense against Sentry, but they are overwhelmed by his immense power. Loki, feeling responsible for helping Osborn stage the attack, used the Norn Stones to re-energize the Avengers. Sentry realized that Loki is helping the Avengers and instantly killed Loki by ripping him in half too. In a last-ditch effort, Iron Man used the shield helicarrier as a large bullet and rammed it into Sentry. Battered and beaten, the Sentry reverts back to Robert Reynolds and asked to be killed after seeing all the damage he had done. Thor is reluctant at first, but the Void begins to take control again, and with one final blow from Mjolnir, Thor killed both Reynolds and the Void. Feeling remorse, Thor takes the remains of Sentry and threw him into the sun. Years later, the Sentry returns after becoming the Horseman of Death for the Apocalypse Twins. When the Uncanny Avengers discovered the Apocalypse Twins' hideout, Sentry made a beeline for Thor and flew him light years away from the battle. Sentry explains to Thor that he isn't angry for what he did, instead saying that he understands Thor's rage towards the Void for murdering his brother Loki. Sentry then easily overpowers Thor, but then he encounters Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. The Wasp was able to convince Sentry to help them in their battle against the Apocalypse Twins, and even some of the incredibly powerful Celestials. He's able to stop one of the Celestials single-handedly, which is very impressive. After the victory, he tells Janet how happy he was to be an Avenger again before flying off into space. So that's it. That's just a short, brief history of the Sentry, one of the strongest superheroes in the Marvel Universe. What do y'all think? Sound off in the comments down below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Also, I have started a new channel, which is a movie review channel. It's called Danco Reviews, and there you can hear my thoughts about Doctor Strange, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and Rogue One. So go over there, the link is in the description down below, and be sure to check